Hi, how y'all doing out there in YouTube land? This Stiletto coming at you from the Wild Wild West. Well, this one's going to be for Niko that plays the drums. Did I say that right? Niko that plays the drums? I think that was right. He was asking me about polishing the bronze phosphor washers. And he wanted to know how I do it. So I'm going to show you how I do it. All right, let's get this party started. Things I use: Militech 1 oil, lithium base oil. It's a gun oil. I use it on my knives and guns also. Lithium base Militech 1 gun grease. This is the grease that I use. I only use it on knives and guns. Permatex blue Loctite. Get it at your local hardware store. These you can get I'm pretty sure I'm still on Amazon and eBay. Alright people, this is water. That's not beer or anything, that's just water. What we got here is a pan. We're going to do some wet sanding. So let's go ahead and move some of these things out the way and get this party started. These are the tools that I'll need. Got a T8 and T10. I mean not T8 but T6 and T10. The sandpaper that I'm using is a wet sandpaper, 3000 grit. Anything I would say from like 1500 to like 3000 grit you can make work. 3000 grit is like the hardest grit of sandpaper for me to get my area. Usually the highest that the hardware stores have is like 2500, but sometimes I have the 3000. And when they do, I get it. So lots of times I'll use like 2500. That's the other one that I use a lot too. Do this job. Okay, all these knives have been done. Every one of these I've done the washers in. These are all my new ones for this year. And y'all seen how fidgety they are. None of these have loose blades. All these blades are rock solid. Excellent knives. And that's how they work after you do. I'm going to show you guys. This is another one that I know that some of you guys have probably bought already, and you know how this one operates. It's real stiff, right? Oh, here we go, Juno. Juno's joining the party. Juno's joining the party. She's coming up here to say hello to everybody. That's my girl. Yeah, that's my girl, queen of the house. She running things, huh? You run things around here, huh? Well, do I have permission to make the video, Queen Juno? Do I have your permission? Queen of the Order of the Blades. The Karambit Master. That's my sweetie. Alright, kiddo. Let me make the video. That's my girl. Look up here. That's my girl. Alright, as y'all know, how stiff these are when they first come. You watching? I see you watching. That's my girl. I see you, sweetie. Beautiful knife. Another one of the new ones I did. These are all super tight blades. No blade wobble or anything. No side to side. No up and down at all. But they still will drop. That's because they have polished washers, bronze phosphor washers. This one has been the most fidgety one of all of them. Absolutely love it. Alright people, but the one that we're going to do today, because all of my knives that I carry, I've done the washers on pretty much, and this one I haven't done in a long time. So these have been recently done. So there's no need for me to take those apart. We're going to take this one apart. Pivot was Loctited. All the knives I carry, when I first get them, I always service them. As you can see, I never put Loctite on the body screws. And the reason for that is because I plan on taking it apart. And the body screws don't come loose. I mean, all you have to do is put them in there finger tight, and they stay in there. It's the pivot screws that you have to Loctite. And not a whole lot of Loctite, just a little bit. This one shouldn't be too hard to come apart. It's been apart before. Take a little pressure off the spring, usually makes things a little bit easier. I mean, yeah, do it like that. There's our washers. Yeah, that could handle some polishing. All right, I'm glad I took this one apart. This is a knife that I carry a lot. And it hasn't been, I'm going to take off the lock bar all the way because it's sort of in my way. Look how stout these lock bars are. That's why these knives are so strong. Everything, all the components are strong. Like the other day I was talking about, I wish that somebody would make a plunge lock folder like that with, you know, strong components everywhere. There we go. These are D-shaped pivots. All right. Now you can see what the washers look like before we're polishing them. I'm going to set all these little parts to the side. Keep them organized. Clean everything up too. Put the lock bar back on. All right. Pivot came back out. I'm gonna clean this all off because I'm gonna put fresh grease on this when I put it all back together. Fresh grease and oil. This is one of my favorite ones to carry all the time. Anybody that knows me knows I like this knife. I am a big fan of the Voyger XLs. Major fan of the Voyger XL. I've always wished that somebody would make them. I wish, you know, like Fly Titanium or one of the makers of scales or whatever would make scales for these models for the Voyagers. Because I would love to have G10 scales. G10 or Micarta or whatever. You know, in place of this. And that's all they have to do is just make the scale like this. You don't have to make because I like having aluminum liners myself. I think it makes the blades work a little bit smoother. I just want to have them like sort of like they did the 80-20.5s because they sort of have like the same type of embedded liner scales. Make some scales just like this, embedded liner scales out of G10 or Micarta. That would be awesome. That would be so awesome for this knife. Because out of the cold steel mega folders, the Voyger has always been one of my favorites. Before they had Recon 1s and Tau Wars and Holdouts and all the other ones I like, the Espadas. There was the Voyagers. I've always liked the Voyagers. Voyagers and Tylite 6s were like the original knives from Cold Steel that I always liked. And the Archangels, I sold them. Sometimes I wish I wouldn't have sold them, but I needed the money at that time. And it was a deal offer I couldn't refuse. Because I really didn't want to sell them. Even though I needed the money, I didn't want to sell them because I really love those knives. Those are some awesome knives. Cold Steel Archangels, if you guys ever get a chance to see them. Beautiful balisons. Cold Steel's really made some awesome knives in their history of knife making, their company. Alright, people. Let's move all these parts aside before we run out of battery time here. Got everything all cleaned up. It's going to be ready to go back together. That's what we're using. And I'm using an old sheet. You could reuse your wet sandpaper. I just brought the gloves out to show you that these are what you can use if you want to, protect your hands from the sandpaper. But it's not that big of a deal to me. It's just sand, black sand. All right, here we go. And all you gotta do is just lightly polish. I like to do it in a circular motion. These are round objects. And so I want to keep, if they get any light scratches in them, I want them to be circular scratches, because that's basically what you're doing when you're polishing. The only real thing that you're trying to do right now is you're not trying to remove metal, you're just trying to remove the tarnish. It doesn't take a whole lot. You don't apply hardly any pressure at all. See how it's starting to get polished already? Compared to this one. It's getting there already. So basically what you're doing is you're cleaning off the washer. And the larger grit sandpaper you use, the finer the scratches are, the higher the polish is, and the smoother the surface is. So when it rubs against other surfaces, there's no friction. It removes a lot of the friction. You don't never want to push down. You don't want to never use like a lower grit sandpaper, like a wet sandpaper, like anything below 1500 grit. I would never go below 1500 grit doing this, because you start to remove a lot of material. Instead of just polishing, you would start removing a lot of material. Things that are like 1000 grit and below, those are your wet sandpapers that will actually put that you're removing your deeper scratches out, and you're trying to get the surface ready for a higher polish. Doing this, you don't have to get a surface ready. You just need to have something that can do the higher polish, because the surface is already smooth. It doesn't need to be sanded down. It just needs to be cleaned. The surface just needs to be polished. And you don't put any pressure at all on this. You just want to be able to make your finger go around in circles. You don't want to put any pressure. You're not trying to thin out this washer. You're just trying to clean it up. That one's pretty good right there. I don't need to go any further than that. Compare it to the other one. This one that needs to be still polished. Now I'll get to the other one. And when I put these back together, I will coat I'll put a light coated lithium-based grease on the washers. And put a light coat on the Teflon washers, and a drop of oil on each side. I don't use any kind of buffing compounds or any kind of thing like that on washers. I use it on other metals, like like on scales or something like that. But I will not use it on the washers because that's not what you're trying to do. You're just trying to clean off the surface of the washer. You're not trying to put buffing compounds or anything like that, polishing compounds on it. There we go, that's good. Get this out the way. Get ready to put things back together. This is a light polish. It's not like a mirror polish, just just a clean off. I don't know how to describe it. Just cleaning off the washers, basically. You're not trying to remove metal. If you're removing a whole lot of metal, then you're doing it wrong. All right, let's put this bad boy back together. I've always had, ever since they've been making these, Tonto Voyagers. I love the Tonto Voyager. Absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite all-time knives. But now I like this one too, though. I like the Barong too. I like that new Barong Voyager too. Another one of my favorites. I gave one to Lucky. My first one that I had, I gave it to Lucky. All right, here we go. Put some grease on my fingers. Pick up the washer. First one goes on. Where's my Teflon washers? Oh, there. Teflon washer goes on next. Wipe my fingers off. Grab my blade. Make sure it's nice and clean. Now I like to put a little blade right in here in the pivot area. I mean, not blade, a little grease. Now a little blade in there. Do it like that, just a little bit. Now I also like to put a little bit on the pivot. You never want to get grease inside the threads on the pivot, though. That's what you don't want to do. Oh, the pivot came out. Hold on. Put a little grease on it. Now you hold the pivot, grab your blade, hold the pivot, press the lock, and everything pops into place. Teflon washer, put a little grease on my fingers. Teflon washer goes on next. Next washer that we just polished. Now we do some oiling. Forgot to put some oil on the other side, but that's okay. It'll drip. It'll get through the other side. Got a little bit of grease on the side of the pivot. I'm getting it out. Don't want grease inside your pivot, because the pivot will always come loose. There we go. Okay. These polish out really nice too. If you ever want to polish these all the way out, like I've done it on my counterpoint XL, the one that I have that's a BD1 counterpoint XL. Everything's all fitting together good. I always like to put in the body screws first. I never put Loctite on the body screws. The only one I put Loctite on is the pivot screw. That's the way I do all my knives. Why? Because I want to be able to take them apart easily and pull maintenance on them, and I don't want to have to have a problem with getting the T6 screws loose or the body screws loose, the smaller screws. Because usually the body screws are usually not as stout as like the pivot screw. So I tend to like to be a little bit more careful with it and just do things finger tight. That's all you need to do. This knife will stay together. Now, I like to put a little Loctite on the fresh Loctite on the pivot screw. Just a little bit. Just enough to get to re-glue again. And then after I get everything all adjusted, I'll let this knife sit for like 2 days before I even try to use it. Why? Because I want the Loctite to dry so the pivot won't come loose. You gotta give the Loctite time to dry. If you start messing with it right off the bat, the Loctite will never get dry and it won't hold the pivot. Go until it's finger tight. Now I like to back it off about a quarter of a turn. And then I'll check it and see if it's centered. The first time I close it, I don't flip it back and forth. I like to close it lightly so I don't bang anything if it's not centered right. Well, it looks good right off the bat. A little bit loose, so we could tighten it up a little bit. I like to tighten it up until the blade becomes centered. I move the blade to this side, so now when I tighten it up, it should center out. Right there. Oh yeah. Perfect. No blade play, no up and down, no side to side. Drops. Excellent. Excellent. It's perfect. These are some of the best value knives, period, out there. The Voyger series, and especially for people who are just now or just getting into these knives, I'm talking about, when I say these knives, I'm talking about mega folders, you know, with triad locks. This is the best place to start. The best and the most least expensive cold steel budget knife is the Voyger. It's not the Luzon. And y'all know I love the Tylite 6, but it's not the Tylite 6 either. It's the Voyger. This is your best bang for your buck because you're getting a strong. This knife can hold 450 pounds. It's been tested and proven to hold 450 pounds on YouTube by Andrew Demko. This knife right here. You don't need a knife that's stronger than that. But anyway, people, I'm going to close this off right here. Hope everybody's doing good out there. Niko the drummer. I hope you get to see this. Peace out, Stiletto. And Juno says peace too. Peace.